Good afternoon and welcome to another Kerfuffle webinar. And the man laughing when he shouldn't be in the corner is the magical Mr. Kristian Stott. Mr. Stott, how are you, sir?
Very well, Simon. You?
Yeah, I like that. You turned that down then. You were talking off camera and you were upbeat, and now you're making me look a mug.
I am upbeat. That was upbeat.
Okay, mate, you've got a fantastic webinar here today because we're talking about, do robots have a place in the estate agency industry? And before you start, that's not a dig at Andy Overman. This is actual robots, isn't it?
Well, you went there with that one. Virtual robots. Yeah. They haven't got sort of plastic arms and they don't do backflips, but virtual robotics and in particular mixing that with AI.
Yeah. Okay. You're sprinkling all the right terms here now. This is lovely. But in all honesty, that as much as you're saying that, self-deprecatingly, I genuinely think it's really important we frame that right, because you've told me this a few times now, and of course the problem is you hear robots, don't you? And it's very difficult to break out of that. That
100%.
So Roxus,
and I think
Roxus is the company, isn't it, Kristian? So
that's right.
Company, and then titled as digital transformation experts, aren't they? In terms of there. So do you want to just give us the briefest of overviews that we can get the ball rolling with about what they do?
Okay, and I think we're inundated with technology, and indeed incumbent in all of that technology is levels of automation. Whether that exists inside of workflows, whether it's integrations to other products and creating journeys through different things. And, we're not really looking to sort of play so much in that space. What we're looking to do is to help people transform beyond the CRM, beyond the technology they're already using, whether that's to integrate those products together better, or more to actually, with everything that you buy and implement, you create new stuff to do. Even if it's already automating, you create new tasks for the humans to do. And every time people innovate inside their own businesses, they create more things for people to do.
Yeah.
And they want to build beautiful customer journeys. They want to present much more detailed and insightful data to customers. They want to collate and collect it and present it, and it all takes work. And so, particularly in this agency space, I think we feel there's a really big opportunity for robots to help businesses refine human activity down to the empathetic, to the bit that customers want, and then to take the non-empathetic relationships of the task-based transactional stuff and automate that as far as possible. And where people are using decent CRMs, where they're using other technology products, great, amazing. Yeah. And then what we're looking to do is to help them either use them better and faster, or to go beyond those products to deliver the initiatives they're looking to deliver, or just at a transactional level to say, if you do this thing repeatedly, whether it's keystrokes, mouse moves, document collection, data gathering, data moving from one place to the other, logging into portals and registering information, if you're doing those things repeatedly, even if it's a small thing that makes a small change, if you isolate it, map that process, build an automation to deal with it, you don't look back. If you want to scale.
And that's the key element, isn't it, Kristian, is looking and identifying, and you have to break yourself out of the zone, because often you almost just goes on in your business and you don't notice it anymore, even though it can be quite a big job a lot of the time. So the key is to looking, analyzing, and of course we'll come to later on how you can help them out with this review process, but they need to look at that. I think one of the things here that, once I understand the concept of what this automation and these robotics can do, could literally relieve our teams, our human beings, from doing that work. And that's right, isn't it, really?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think what's really interesting is you've got, sort of both ends of the business don't always realize how much goes on at the desktop. And I think often people become so sort of locked into the type of work that they do that they don't analyze the fact that it could potentially be mitigated or changed for the better. They just plow on and keep doing it, and they kind of try to do it harder and harder so that they feel that they're better and better, that the service levels they do are increased, that the customer experience is bettered. And I think that lack of observation, I mean, I've worked with different businesses where their process mapping has ranged from being nil through to really quite precise. And I think when you do that in a business and you find those processes, if there's an opportunity to automate partially or completely, it shouldn't be ignored, because every click and mouse move costs money. Every time you hit a keyboard, it costs money. And if it's not necessary, get rid of it.
And so people quite often always get a bit defensive about this, don't they? Because they talk about, nervously say, oh, well, that means getting rid of XYZ member of staff and everything else. And the key point here, as you said, is, well, very rarely does that need to happen. What it does is it means you don't have to recruit more staff, as many staff as you would have, to help the next phase of expansion or anything else. Yes, you can be hard-nosed about it, but the simple honesty is it doesn't make sense to have a human being doing what a technology and an automation and robotics can do itself, does it? It's just insanity.
Yeah.
You've got to.
I think there's a couple of ways of looking at that. The first one is, if you sit in a meeting with a staff member and say to them, do you feel you're wasting a ton of time every day with laborious, repetitive tasks that don't really help you make money, and they are barriers to you delivering the empathetic service you want to give? They pretty much universally say no.
Yeah.
No, I don't do that, because it's a confession. If they have to announce the fact that they are doing laborious, repetitive work, what are they worried about? That they might be right, that you might take it away. And you talked about not adding more humans to scale, which is a really good benefit of workflow automation at any level, whether you're doing that inside a CRM with native functions, or whether you're actually building it in with other layers of technology. And I think what's really important is getting the humans doing the right kind of work in the first place. If you say to, certainly an agency, it's a particularly salient point, is that if you ask the customer what exactly they wanted, they want someone to look after them, to understand them, to care about them, to make the journey easy, to reassure them. All of those things are very human relationships. They take for granted the fact that you're going to download a document from the land registry to register a tenancy deposit. They take for granted that the sales progression process is really quite arduous and challenging. They take for granted that lead handling is bulky, and there's a lot of failed leads before you get to the one that turns into gold. And I don't think they really care how you get there or what gets done, as long as it does get done. But if you want to give them more of the secret sauce, the bit that they love, it's free up the humans' time to allow them to focus on that customer experience and the interactions. Don't tie up that time clicking and typing and dragging one thing from one place to another and logging into something to do something, because it can be automated.
Well, let's tap into the first time I've ever done it, my economics history degree.
Right.
And yeah, you're absolutely right. What's interesting is that things like this, robotics, automation, they create opportunities. And, during the Industrial Revolution, and many people talk about this next robotics revolution that we're going to go through. There will be some losses, but it will be a transitory period, as you saw during the Industrial Revolution. If you think about what happened to the cotton mills, you wouldn't think, say today, well, obviously it makes sense for loads of humans to try and replicate that same work, would you? What happened was, in those things, humans went on then to they went on to do the creative, didn't they? Designing the fashion pieces, and letting those automated tasks, or those repetitive tasks, let the machines deal with it, basically.
I think also, if you look at that competitive space, every business has to focus on its value proposition. Why are we better than them? Why would somebody want to work with us? Why would somebody want to use us? And I think if you actually got in a sort of panel of customers and said, do you want to work with us because we upload files to the internet better than the agent next door, or any other repeat task, no one's going to vote for that. They're not interested. No. The value proposition is around how it makes you feel, the experience, the value for money. Was it good? And I don't think that's aided in that sense. I think you're absolutely right. This revolution, people want engaging work. They want fulfilling work. They want to enjoy it. They want their customers to enjoy it, and that can be achieved with automation. And yes, is it a revolution? I don't know how long it's going to take. I mean, if you look at the stats on, key business decisions by 2035 are going to be made by people that are young now, who drive technology at a phenomenal pace. More importantly, they look for hacks. They look to cut out the journey. They want automation in everything they do. They don't want to be tapping and clicking and typing.
One of the tidiest accusations for the last 10, 15 years in property has been, we've been waiting for this huge disruptive wave that is going to come along and change everything forever. And they spoke about that with the online agents for a long period of time. But actually,
if you listen to the property press, it happens twice a week. But
and it's been awfully robust, or whereas other industries have seen that kind of change here. But what it strikes me as is that this genuinely does have the ability to deliver those disruptive changes. And what's interesting is we're not now at the kind of MVP stage. We're not looking at when technology sometimes is launched and breaks on the rocks, doesn't it? Because with its first wave failure. This is out there. This is happening. There are plenty of industries, and like with every kind of revolution, you can be ahead of the curve, or you can be, often drowned out by that wave, can't you? That comes along, and so those people that pivot quickly with this can genuinely seize a massive advantage, can't they?
100%. And if you look at the use cases, I think with a lot of technology, people are trying to sort of ride in on a white horse and cure every problem in one fell swoop and watch it all go away. And I think that level of expectation is always quite upsetting. You never actually get what you thought you might. I think looking at finding lots of little things that go on all the time and just fixing those problems, making them go away, that level of technology, yes, revolution, word you used. I think it will become pervasive. There's an element where, as let's call it core applications, CRMs, as they iterate their product, they will further automate, they will build out very intelligent workflows, they will integrate further and further and deeper into all the ecosystem of product. But you will still have your own idiosyncratic behaviors, your own customer journeys and experiences that you wish to deliver, which involve doing stuff, tasks, adding bits here, passing bits there. And I think because of that, you're right. If you're at the front curve, you can build that business that runs beautifully, because the humans in that business are doing exactly what you pay them for, which is making decisions, delivering empathy, delivering experiences, not filling in forms and
not doing that. Well, we're going to come back to the CRMs later, because there's a point I really want to touch on there, which we'll do. So talk us how you particularly got to this place, then give us your background in terms of and also why agents should listen to you, because of course they are very I was saying that in a polite way, but they're used to ivory tower techies coming along and promising all this prop tech bullshit, frankly, and they're tired of it. And what I think is vital in getting across to them is you've lived and breathed agency for now too long to remember and everything else, but you do sit as well very ably in that very tech savvy element there, and that's why I think you're very worth talking to. So I've teed you up. Give us your this is your life. Tell us.
Well, I don't know how long I've known you now, but it's a long time. You're right. I've got a technical background and done a lot of work inside of agency, culminating in sort of business management and building teams in agency. And a part of that has been watching the inbound flow of regulatory compliance, data upon data upon data, product upon product, all these must-haves, can't live without. So like you say, this guy arrives.
Sorry about telling you that.
Well, yeah, this guy arrives and says, buy my CRM, it's the best ever.
And then he buggers off.
Yeah. And I think for me, I'm quite focused on looking for small but meaningful problems to fix, and I'm quite good at knowing which rug to pull back in order to find them. It's a long-winded and difficult process, because the introspect and the engineering processes you have to go through to find out what you do, how you do it, then analyze whether you could do it differently. And once you've actually got through that process, then you build out the automation, and you look at the automation, you look at the breakpoints. Well, at which point do I want a human involved in this?
Yeah.
A good example would be something like rent collect. If you try to automate completely rent collect from one end to the other, you're going to miss a really vital component, which is empathy. There's generally a good reason why people haven't paid their rent, and they will be stressed about it. So you've got to look at those business processes and say, right, up to this point, we can automate every single phase of this journey. But right here, we're going to get a human involved. We're going to deliver that personalized service to make it comfortable. And then we're going to go back to automating.
What you're saying there is, think about, it's not either or. It's like so many of these things, omni-channel or whatever else. It's a mixed blend of that part of the process is going to be automated and looked after by technology. This part, once it hits that, the baton is passed. That's when a human being picks it up and takes their place in the whole relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. And one word that you see a lot in the industry is this concept of augmenting. And I think the truth is it's quite a well-positioned term. It's not replacing. It's saying, right, how can we do this as well as possible? So how can we take this individual, a good example is one way of using robotics is actually an attended robot, which sits on your desktop. It's, a guy I work with describes it as that horrible little paperclip that used to jump up in Microsoft Office all those years ago. He was actually the most infuriating piece of technology ever, but that's by the by.
Wasn't it Clippy?
Clippy, yeah. Horrible little thing. But anyway.
I call that
attended robotics.
I call that the missus now. she's always trying to give me advice like that. I don't want to know.
It looked like you're writing a letter, Whaley. The attended robotics will sit there and it will know what those routine tasks are. So let's say, for example, you register something into a website.
Yeah.
So the attended robot will notice you're doing that act, or note the trigger that creates that act, and do it for you.
Yeah.
So, the human still looks at the same screen doing the same things, but their activity is augmented by the fact that the robot knows what they're doing, knows how to do it for them, and takes over at that most full point. If you think about, contact centers are a really interesting one. To say you could completely automate a contact center in most industries is probably a new breed of madness. But to say I have a target of reducing call times by 10%, but increasing client satisfaction by 20%, how are you going to do that? You can't do it by adding more people, because you're not necessarily reducing call time. So what you've got to do is perform better on a per call basis.
Yeah.
And that is in two ways. One is to, if you want to increase the customer experience, you've still got to deliver the outcomes they're looking for. So, first call resolution, authoritative behaviors, delivering the thing they asked you to do, but doing it quicker and smoother. So they still are as grateful or more grateful at the end, but spent less time getting to that point.
Yeah.
And, augmenting that human behavior to speed it up, to make it more accurate, to make it more valuable, to bring in more data or create new events quicker. You're not dramatically fixing or eradicating a contact center problem. You're changing it and creating better, smoother, faster behaviors to make it more efficient, to make it more cost effective, to increase the engagement levels and the value that the contact center agents feel, and to increase customer experience at the other end. So at the end of that call, they sort of say, right, first call resolution. Not that they'd use that terminology, but in their mind, they're going, wow, they did the thing I asked them to do.
Yeah.
That's great, because normally they escort me or pass me here or interdepartment me or get back to me with an email. You know, they fixed the thing I wanted. And all these outcomes happened, and I got an email, and I got a bottle of wine in the post, and my thing got updated, and my balance got settled, and it happened real quick.
Yeah.
2-3 minutes, all over and done.
So what that strikes me as we're looking at here is, we were talking again about kind of the British cycling team, wasn't it? And Dave Brailsford famously talking about those iterative improvements, and so many businesses and, you know, agents I've seen over the years have looked at that. They've looked at the goal, and, you know, I know they always say to visualize success, and that's the way to do it, but that doesn't actually put a strategy in place, does it? It doesn't tell you how to achieve that. And their problem is, if they look at a doubling of turnover as you know, as there, it's too amorphous to actually be able to act on it. Whereas what those guys did fantastically well, you know, in the British cycling team, and they took it into rugby and everything else, was they looked at the iterative improvements, didn't they? Where you can get a 1% improvement here, 2% there, and those cumulative improvements were the things that did lead to the doubling of turnover, but it was done in achievable bite-sized manner.
Yes, and it's infinite, or as infinite as you can possibly get. You know, you don't just do it and stop. You don't just say, wow, we've achieved perfection, that's it now, let's put our feet up. You know, you constantly iterate, you constantly come up with new ideas, and you constantly evaluate what's going on, why it's going on, and how you can improve that thing, whatever it might be. And also, stuff around us changes. You know, every week you read about a new prop tech launch. It's like, wow, I want that. And that's going to do some great things for me. How do I get it? And if I do get it, what happens?
First of all, you go to Kerfuffle, get their expert advice. Anyway.
There you go.
Shoehorn that in there, didn't they? There's no robotics that's going to be able to replace my level of hard sell.
No.
Thank you again. Your pause there said more than real words ever could. But Kristian, just in terms of one of the things that I find just fascinating about this, but also really daunting, is I can understand, I can get the logic. I can see the place when you've got these digital robots working, you know, digitally rekeying information and everything else there. But how the bloody hell do you get started? What's the process for getting off the ground with this?
So, okay, it depends how far down Darwin's drawing you want to go. If you want to go all the way back to the monkey, you've got to culturally accept that you want to do it. You know, you've got to sort of think hard about because it's hard work. You know, I mean, the last business I worked in was ISO 9001, and everyone hates it. It's horrible because you have to analyze, document everything you do, and then you have to live in that regulated space. You have to behave consistently around everything you do, and it's worth it because the outcomes are consistent and of a high quality, and you can analyze failure and success equally by auditing back through it. But you know, you've got to culturally want that, and I think that's the first place every business should say is do I want to lift up the bonnet and start trying to see what's going on here and refine it. The next phase is to say, right, if I rush at this like a bull at a gate and try to change everything all at once, a lot of it's going to fail. I'm going to find it very frustrating, and that in itself is a bad outcome. If it's predictable, don't start. And I think it's a case of saying what small things can we do. You know, one of the options that we've got, and we're working on it in the background, is to productize elements of automation that we think lots of people will want. But actually, for me, I'm not necessarily sure that brings the greatest value. I personally think that allowing businesses, rather than corralling them into, oh, you need automation X to perform task Y, is actually allowing them to say, what about this? Can I do this? And you know, that could be a plethora of things. One of the things I know agents are looking to do is to build out enriched portals for their customers to be able to log into, which extend beyond most CRMs have got something that you can log into, but they want to collate loads of data all in one place that you log in and you get it. So maybe that's a place to start. Maybe something innovative, an initiative that says, I want to build this thing, and there's no one product or one set of integrations or APIs that allows me to do that, but I still want it. Maybe you look at I think lettings, any business that's certainly either a multidiscipline or lettings focused business, there's so much that goes on in lettings, which is administrative.
Yes.
It's a highly administrative part of the business, and maybe looking there at the automations,
So one of the things I was going to say is then one of those, when you've got those, you suspect you've got a task that's currently be undertaken by people in your business. It's repetitive. It's essentially a waste of time. You surmise that actually these digital robots could help you out with this. One of the things that you actually do is, just remind me of, I'll get the terminology wrong, but you have the ability to put essentially some tracking tools that will then monitor the amount of work that's going on. Is that right? To kind of assess exactly what level of work's going on, and then you build the robots around that. Or if you deem that there isn't enough, you're not going to get enough benefits, be honest and say, look, I don't really think it's worthwhile to automate.
Yes, and I think that is. It's a technology that I think is very exciting. That concept, you don't know what you don't know, which is a term I love. What they allow you to do, one of the ways I've worked in the past is perhaps a bit like, going back to the Industrial Revolution, that concept of sitting by Nelly, where, the newest person on the job sits next to the oldest, most time served and watches and learns. And it's a good way of learning what people do, but it's hard work. So what the discovery process does, the robots, is they sit inside the network, inside the user's machine for an extended period of time, and they monitor every single activity that goes on. We can redact or whitelist, blacklist stuff to say, if they log into Facebook, don't look at what they're doing. If they log into their bank, don't look at what they're doing. But essentially what they do is the robots run a series of algorithms, really, and take snapshots to analyze repetitive behavior, and they process map it. So they don't just notice you're doing it, they document and redocument every single step that you go through, which is particularly useful if you've got a team of people doing, same job, same outcome, potentially with different processes, different steps, doing it in a different order, and it will analyze it and it will build it out, it will process map it, so that you can actually sit down and say, right, through this analysis process, we've come up with 20 things that you do repetitively. And of those, numbers 10 to 20, you're not going to save that money. It's a couple of minutes a day. It's no biggie. Numbers 5 to 10, you are going to save money, but they're down the line, second phase. First 5, hit them now, because you've got people driving these desks all day, every day, and these processes are throttling their capacity to actually break out of their current work cycles on a daily basis. They're holding your team back. And the nice thing is, not only does it allow you to realize that those things are happening, it tells you exactly how they happen, who does it, how long it takes, what all this are, and off you go. Now, one of the things you can do with that is to actually reverse engineer, just use it as data, reverse engineer the process. So even if you don't automate it, you can say, right, well, I measured 3 people who had the same start point, the same outcome. And of those 3, one of them can do it in 3 minutes and the other takes 6.
Yeah. So what does good
so
look
let's
benchmarking performance.
Yeah, exactly that.
So what's fascinating, I mean, that really is interesting in terms of how you do that. And what's brilliant, again, is this isn't then subjective, although I guarantee that those numbers would back up the gut feel of the principal. That's why they'll have called you in. But you're acting on data and information rather than just taking a punt at it. And that's a wonderful position to be in, because once you're in there, famously, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. But you can also then benchmark improvement, can't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's really good.
Another really interesting thing, which I think has an almost dramatic use case in any service-driven industry, in particular where it's a knowledge service, knowledge-based service, is use the to first of all map and different process. And a great example is contact center. Customer calls to find out how much their balance is on their rent and when it's got to be paid, for example. So if that question gets asked repetitively in that space, it's probably haven't picked a good example there, but anyway, if that process happens repeatedly in that space, first of all, you run the discovery on it, you work out what the process is, why it's going on, what it looks like, how it happens. Then you work on refining it. Then you build it into an attended robot to say, right, drive everybody's desk with them through this process. So if you've got a brand new person arriving on their first day, the training process can be, right, sit here and the robot's going to train you. The robot's going to get you faster and faster. Now click this, now open this window, now look at this part of the window which says outstanding rent balance. Now look at this part of the window that says pay here, or whatever it is that you're looking to do, so that you can not just map those processes, but make sure that everybody's doing them in the same way as you've defined, as you want to be trained, and you constantly retrain. You use the word benchmarking, which is actually a good point, is to say, right, if the fastest possible way of doing it is this, how do we get everybody there? Or the smoothest way, or the nicest way, the most beneficial experience to the person receiving it way, whichever one you want to choose, benchmark it, and then build towards it. It's good word, that.
It is. Okay. So, well, it's obviously come from me, but why don't you just rely on integrations? You spoke about earlier, that's great that people are integrating. Is it simply that, look, people are talking the talk about integrations, but they're not happening as quickly as they need to?
Oh God, do you know what? I think we could probably just book a series of calls just on that topic, Simon. I think so first of all, a standard integration. Okay, good. So open CRM, and I want to tenant reference somebody. Standard integration, and it can live in an omnidirectional world. Press this button, sends it to the referencing company, and they do their thing. Bidirectional is when they've done that thing, they push it back the other way. It's a common use case. Great. So one of the problems you've got is a lot of technology overlaps. So if you put a Venn diagram of all the different functions, they overlap, and not only do they overlap, but they're trying to increase that overlap over time to gain more market share, increase product competency, all those different things. So if you think about it, they don't really have that strong a vested interest in integrating, because it's co-opetition at best, but competition mainly. The other problem with integrations is idiosyncratic integration is very expensive, because you've got to build it yourself. And when you have built it yourself, you then carry that burden of innovation, so that every time you want to improve it, it's your problem to develop it, or pay your integration provider to develop it. And it's expensive. And also it's a big and hard dream to dream, because if you say, well, what's the role? Is my role to be constantly iterating and innovating my integration out to this thing? And the nice thing with automations is you don't need that dev at that level. You don't need those barriers where someone says, well, we don't do that, or I've got an API and they haven't, so it can never happen. Or we actually have locked down that portion of data, so even though we can integrate this piece, we can't ever integrate that. So we're not bounded by those restrictions with robotic automation. The robots have a native API, so it can talk API to API all day, but they can log in through the user interface. So if you've got a barrier to integration, going through the user interface, log in with a password, username.
It can be elegant there. It can go down the finessed route, if you like, but it can also be a battering ram if it needs to, and make this stuff happen.
Yeah, and a nice thing with it is you can switch it off which, you know, you talk about sort of sunk cost, a lot of the integrations and clever tech people develop, they can't switch it off because it costs so much.
Yeah.
So whether it's useful or not, it was expensive. And when they do switch it off, they have to cry themselves to sleep over it because it costs them so much money to get there. And that's not me necessarily being critical of that space, because actually there's a lot of providers out there that do an amazing job. They build beautiful software. Some of them have even swung those doors open and you know, come one, come all in terms of what they're willing to integrate with. I'm not going to name names, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, others haven't, can't, won't. You know, so it's not a level playing field. You know, one of the things that we build a ton of stuff to is Salesforce, and there's an element that says if everyone in the world used Salesforce, it'd be a brighter place. But anyway,
oh, God, I'd have to put up with their sales guys telling me it was the end of quarter again for the 13th consecutive day of the month. Though I can't bear. That's not that's not a world I want to live in.
Soon they'll be starting all their calls with "the weather's lovely here in Europe. How's things with you?" You know, it's that case of where you've got a sort of universally integratable platform that can be built from the ground up. You can do anything you want, but that's not the conversation we're having. You know, we're having a conversation around, you know, what can't we do and how can we change that? You know, what things do we want to do? Which is totally different, isn't it?
It is. So, I mean, this is on a similar vein, you know, obviously the CRMs do have automations in there as well. Is it the same? Is it just the same element with them that you can spend your life trying to get the CRM companies to kind of bespoke that automation for you, whereas you can actually just get it done and literally almost retain the IP yourself? Would that make, is that?
Well, yeah, there's that. I mean, there's always the element, Simon, where if it already does it, then there's no opportunity there. You know, if you've got a workflow automation inside your CRM that does the thing you want to do, use it, because it's either native functionality or it's very easy to build in, and you know, a little bit of money and a little bit of dev time at your software provider's end, and it's all sorted, job done. I'll give you a really good example of a work piece we've just done for a different industry, but they basically log into a number of different systems.
Yeah.
And they output reports.
Yeah.
But what they really want is MI off the back of those reports. So they want those reports to be sucked into dashboards.
Yeah.
I mean, they're using Microsoft Power BI, but there's a ton of products out there that you can use. So if you think about it, it was quite hard for them to go to all those different systems and automate the process of ejecting the data and then ingesting it through the BI. So the robot sits in the middle of the two. So it doesn't actually do something which I would say is clever or exciting in any way. It just, if a human was going to have to log in, press report, change some of the filters to say, I want January to May, export the report in CSV format, maybe rename it or drag it into SharePoint or put it somewhere else, and then ingest it into the Power BI so that you get your MI metrics. So the robot has only helped by taking out like 20 clicks. So you've not end-to-end automated some brand new revenue stream process. You know, it's not that exciting. It's just that instead of one person having to do it, we'll just do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I think that's the thing that people should be looking for, is those little things that go on all day, every day in all of our businesses. You know, they cost money, they cost time, and they're boring.
So I mean, it's an obvious one, but it adds value to the clients, doesn't it? I mean, ultimately, and here's the nice thing: you're going to literally, as we said earlier, be able to measure those improvements.
Yes.
Okay. So how would you possibly go around pricing up something like this? You know, people, I'm sure lots of people hearing this is saying that this is fantastically exciting. This sounds like the future, but then it also sounds really expensive. So where should people's expectations be on this? You know, as ever, pricing is a spectrum.
It's a really difficult question because I don't have a product line. You know, so it'd be really interesting to say, you know, one apple, £1. So the truth is actually, we need to see what the problem is. We need to go through the process of mapping it out and understanding it and understanding how to fix it before we've any idea of how much robot time, robot resource is going to be consumed in it. So as a business, you know, we've got a number of models, you know, from a transactional model to a sort of robot rental model. And you know, there's horses for courses. Different models fit with different things.
Yeah.
What I would say is probably is relevant is, first of all, the bigger the business, the more repetitive tasks. One, the more money you can save,
Yep.
and two, the more valid the implementation of automations and robots will be.
Yeah.
That's
so would that be fair to say then that because of its nature, lettings and property management is an obvious starter as well?
100%. And in particular at things like compliance, regulatory stuff, you know, gas certs, all that sort of stuff. You know, they're must-dos. They have to happen. They have to be done perfectly. You can't afford any errors. And, you know, robots don't make mistakes once you've trained them properly. You know, they get it bang on. They can reverse audit. They can inline audit. So, you know, you could actually have your humans doing the gas cert stuff, but the robot just checks it was done right every time, or goes back for compliance stuff. So in terms of pricing, if you look, you know, robots don't go on holiday. They don't need a loo. They don't smoke. In terms of output, they run 24 hours a day, 7 weeks.
Yeah, to be fair, so do I, mate.
So
I run 24 hours a day. Well, I will be when I'm allowed out.
there you go. Yeah. And so because of that, if a robot was the price of a human, the robot will outperform the human to a factor of somewhere between 5 and 10, depending on what that is.
Oh, just say those stats again, because you just cut up there. A factor of what?
5 to 10.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So this is so this could be as transformational as many businesses did in the early days when they outsourced and they were, you know, they were obviously chasing the lower salary to try and achieve the same thing. What they didn't bank on, of course, was that people in those countries would, over a period of time, start demanding, quite rightly, higher wages, and so the actual competitive gap disappeared. Well, unless Skynet appears, we're not going to start having robots asking for a higher salary, are we?
No, I mean, there's an element where they live inside of computers, and you know, if you look at sort of, you know, modern computing, resources go up. You have got this sort of competitive race to bring prices down, but you know, everything goes up, the electricity, all those different things, it goes up. So, you know, they will get more expensive over time, but only slightly, and no more than the comparable alternative.
Yeah. Because
wages rise, not enough, but wages rise. You know, the cost of housing employees rises, all those different things. I think also that intelligent automation is a very new industry. Let's say it's 5 or 6 years old, and it's not yet universal. It's not ubiquitous.
No.
And I think there is a point at which, you know, you've got very basic automation tech, so the stuff that Microsoft chuck in for free. Pretty much, which is really useful, you know, especially if you're working SharePoint to spreadsheet, that sort of stuff. And I think what's going to happen is, as demand rises and as, you know, automations and robotics become more universal, that price point's going to come down. You know, right now, I wouldn't say necessarily that robotics is expensive, but I do think there's space for it to become less so. What we also need is, you know, it's a small industry and it's a young industry, and we need more development in the industry. And, you know, as those development skills become more accessible, price of those skills comes down.
Yeah, of course.
You know, right now, high end. Go on, you speak.
Sorry, I was just about to say. So basically, you know, and obviously you've been again kind, like so many of our partners, to come up with a kerfuffle deal for us. And that basically is this is the key thing, isn't it? Is, look, people won't know how to get started, so you will literally do that you know, that consultation piece with them to understand what their challenges are and whether this can help them out. And that's a completely free consultation whilst you understand what they're about, basically.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do that at a cultural end. in terms of let's chat about how you feel about the business and how you feel about some of the things you've chosen to do and the service standards you're looking to meet and what's going on in order to get there. Or they can look at it in a really granular perspective and say, well, we definitely do this. Can you have a look at it?
Yeah.
You know, I don't, you know, I'm really happy to help on either end or anywhere in between. You know, if people have got immediate challenges that they do know how to solve, because humans, the one thing you can say about humans is they can solve most things, but they're not necessarily convinced that throwing hours and hours of labor at that challenge is the most suitable route through the problem. Well, that's a really good point to talk.
And not least as well, when, you know, there's hopefully it's all solving, but not least when that human, as you said, can be furloughed the next week, the next month or whatever, or subject to all the normal frailties of human beings just by definition. So, you know, as you said, the robot will never have that effect. So I think that's key. So I think let's just summarize this now. So essentially those agents should think about their businesses, look at those repetitive processes and everything else, and reach out to you, and let's book in that initial consultation. As we said, all no commitments or anything else like that. I would echo as well. I said there seem to me, just we're talking about one side, but there's plenty of suppliers out there where duplication of effort is just endemic. So, you know, reach out, give us a ring, please, because we're trying to put together a panel of suppliers that we can talk to with Kristian to see if he can help solve some of those issues as well. Because with 600 suppliers on the site, I already know a few that we should be talking to that need those skills from you, definitely.
Super. And, you know, I think it's brilliant. You know, there's, like you say there, it's a case, this repetitive effort. So you want the tech, and many of them do have integrations, but there's still, you know, activity triggers. Some of them are internal. You know, look at some of the processes around AML, beneficial ownership in a sales progression cycle. You know, they're not huge tasks. You know, you don't need a project sheet to go and do one of them. No. But they take 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, to log into here, type in these details, download this thing, click this thing, you know, and all of those in that whole ecosystem of supplier to supplier, or supplier to client, or client, or sort of agency customer out to their own customer base. What is it you want to do that you're finding hard? That seems too expensive, that seems too laborious, that every time you try to get people to take on the initiative, they put it on their list, but it never gets done. What are those challenges? Let's have a look at them.
Perfect. Okay, Kristian, look, it's very exciting. I'm particularly excited to see how this develops. So let's obviously catch up and stay in touch, and let's get some clients on as well, talking about their real life experiences, because this goes across the whole gamut of what you do in a business, isn't it? And that's the exciting elements of it. For today, mate, Thank you very much. Exciting as ever, and let's continue talking.
It's really lovely to see you, Simon. Take care.
Cheers, matey. Thank you.